Knowing how to gamify within your lesson is a superpower that every instructor needs to know. Not just those that teach kids, but also those that teach teens and adults. And that's because gamification is a superpower that you as the instructor can launch at any time out in the arena to really increase your students' engagement, and it can also help to boost their learning and their retention and just understanding of whatever skill or skills that they're working on at that time. So gamification is something that you can apply across the board no matter what type of lesson you're teaching, whether it's adaptive or also called therapeutic horseback riding lessons, traditional riding lessons, or anything in between. My name is Sabra Popoli, and I'm the owner and founder of Hoof Falls and Footfalls. And through Hoof Falls and Footfalls, I teach a very wide mix of lessons and use gamification in almost every single lesson I teach, no matter the age of my students. And gamification is something that I also do quite a bit when I teach an instructor development and growth and learning workshops to fellow instructors who go out and teach adaptive riding lessons as well. So when we think of games or gamifications, a lot of times we think about like props and having to do extra setup and a bunch of extra work that we're going to have to do as instructors. But the really cool thing about gamification is when it's done right, the only extra props, so to speak, that you need are your brain and thinking about what you're going to be doing in that lesson and how you can kind of take a few things that we'll be talking about and tweak them a little bit to make the different challenges or levels or the different games that we're going to be playing. And you can definitely still use whatever current arena layout is out there. And the more you do this and the more you think about it and practice it, the better you get at it. And some of you guys might already be doing this and just didn't know that gamification was what it was called. So what can I gamify in my lesson? Pretty much everything. You can gamify transitions, so walk, halt, walk, trot, walk. You can gamify rhythm and smoothness within whatever gait that they're riding, breathing. You can gamify shortening and lengthening reins or tack and equipment adjustments like learning how to shorten your stirrups while you're actually on the horse. 2-point, balance, warm-ups that you might be doing. Pretty much anything you do, you can gamify if you just think about it and are super creative. And really, I guess I kind of take back that super creative piece because I'm really not that creative, but I've just done it a lot that it comes naturally to me now. And it's something that you, even if you're not super creative, I know that you can learn how to do. And if you are listening to this, I would absolutely love to hear how you have gamified your lessons without adding in any extra props. So what is a super fun game that you just kind of toss in on the fly to help your students get more engaged and learn that skill that you're practicing, to give them a little bit extra challenge without really making it super hard, but they feel like they're putting in a little bit more work? Go ahead and comment down below wherever you are watching or listening, and I would love to hear from you. And I know that the other instructors that watch and listen to my channels would also love to hear your feedback as well. Okay? Alrighty, so how do I gamify my lessons? So there are several different factors that we can play around with when we're looking to gamify whatever we're doing. And I will kind of pull that gamification piece out anytime I notice my students may be getting a little bored, they're getting like kind of disengaged during that lesson. We're not really ready to go maybe faster or do something that's way harder than what they're ready to do, but they think they're ready to go, run around the arena or go jump over things when we're barely learning how to walk. So gamification is something that I'll pull out, and I'll look at all these different factors that I can adjust to meet the needs of my students that I am teaching in that moment. And these things are totally adjustable. Your students can even kind of help decide once they get to know how this works as well. So the first thing that I'm going to adjust is time. So how quickly do they need to do a task? Time can also kind of roll into distance. So how long can they hold 2.4? Maybe it's a distance marker from cone A to cone B. Maybe it's a time of we're holding our 2 point from 5 seconds to 10 seconds. So those, depending on what your arena setup is. If you don't have anything set up, you can definitely do time. And then if you don't have anything set up, or if you do have something set up, you might want to go with the distance one. Another thing that you can do as well is your number of reps. So how many times in a row are they going to do that task? You can also do the number of unbroken reps. So that's what that's going to stand for. So that could be how many times can you go up and down out of a 3-second 2 point without flopping down in your saddle. So how many soft lands can we get in a row? Or how many precision halts in a row can you get without breaking that record that you have, okay? Other things that you can adjust are gonna be your speed or the gait that you're riding the skill at, or whatever you're trying it at. You can make it harder or easier. And then how much help. That is going to be another thing that I can use to adjust the different levels and challenges that I create for them. And that could be help from another student. If you're teaching a group lesson, that could be help from their volunteer support team. It could be help from the instructor, and that could be a physical prompt. It could be a verbal prompt. It could be a physical prompt as in touching them, or even a physical or visual prompt from the instructor of signaling them to cue them, and it's more of a visual reminder. That can also fall under that category of help. And then another thing that we sometimes forget about too is the number of tasks or skills that I'm asking them to do all at once. And I will actually teach my students to start seeing the number of things that we're laying on, so that they don't think that riding out on the rail by themselves off lead at a 2 point is super simple. No, it's not, because I'm asking you to ride without being on lead. I'm not by you, or your leader's not by you. You have to keep your horse going at a walk. You have to pay attention where you're going. You have to keep your horse on the rail. You have to correct your rein length to go up in a 2 point. You have to hold your 2 point, and then you have to keep doing all that you're doing while you're in 2 point, and then come back down out of it. And, oh, by the way, go ahead and listen to the instructions that I'm giving you as the instructor. So these are tons of things that we can adjust to go ahead and gamify our lessons. And I will be showing you some examples of some common skills and different things that we do in lessons all the time, and how we might actually gamify those different things. So I will be giving you guys examples. Alrighty, so before we get to the examples, let's talk about the difference between when we use gamification for youth and adults. Because whenever we do something that is a game, and whether that's an actual physical game or a gamification of a task, we want to make sure that we're being respectful of our students' physical age, so how long they've been here on this earth. And then when you're in the adaptive riding world, a lot of times our students' physical age is a little different than their cognitive age. So they might look like they're 20, but maybe cognitively they're still at that middle school range. So we have to be careful that we present the gamification in a chronologically age-appropriate way, but know that the cognitive or their mental level of processing might be a little bit lower. So that's how phrasing can make all the difference to not only our students, but also those hearing and watching the lessons. Because we also want to make sure we're demonstrating that respect of our students, no matter if it's a traditional lesson or an adaptive lesson. All right, so we're gonna look at the difference between how we would gamify for our kids or youth, and then gamify for adults. And then the teens are kind of just stuck in the bubble zone, and you got to kind of go off of how mature they or their group are, or individually, you know, how they are. Sometimes I'll give them a choice, like, hey, do you guys want to call it more of that youth wording, or do we want to go with the adult wording for those ones that are kind of in between and in that bubble, okay? So when I'm working with kids, I'm going to be using words like, we're going to level up. That's going to be like your video game. You can do like your boss challenge. You can do, I think there's even like boss mode. You can win stars, win blocks, whatever their terms are. Ask them whatever their favorite game is, and they will tell you what it is called to go to the next level or go to the next task or master it or whatever the heck their terminology is. They will be happy to fill you on what that terminology is for whatever the games that they're playing, and that's gonna get that buy-in and that investment, okay? So our kids, we're gonna use more of that game wording, challenge wording. If they're in a video game, stuff like that. Kids who love reading, it could even be the next chapter, something along those lines, but these are kind of the ones that I go to when I teach the kids. For adults, we could still go level. We could go challenge. Mastery, we have to be careful with that though, because we do want to be honest with them when they have really mastered something or not, because sometimes they haven't. But we're going to shift this wording a little bit to match whatever our adult riders are going to be thinking and doing, and making the wording a little bit more mature, okay? If you do know that they play something like Candy Crush or something along those lines, you could go like win streak. You could do something along the lines of, you know, if it's not against your beliefs or anything, you could go along the lines of, you know, poker hands or gambling or something along that, or slot machines or something. Find out what they like, and you can, if appropriate, go ahead and adjust your wording for that to meet your students where they are at age-wise and what they like doing. Alrighty, so we're going to talk about some of our examples here and how we can gamify some very common skills that we are going to be teaching. And I'll give you some examples of a youth version, and then how I might adjust that to an adult version if it needs adjusting. So 2-point. So my 2-point, I can do something along the lines of, we're going to be doing it at a halt for 5 seconds. Let's say this is our youth side, and then this is our adult side, okay? Then I might try it, depending on how my student's doing, I might try it then at the halt for 10 seconds, and then maybe we do a walk, and I'm gonna let that rider choose a 5 or a 10, and they can choose kind of how they're feeling. But this is gonna get that buy-in, and I can label this as, you know, level 1, level 2, level 3. And then I can even circle back during that next lesson that they're at, and maybe we don't start at level 1, but I ask them what level 2 was, and we start there. So this is something, the levels that you can build on during your lessons throughout the month and the ride year. And it's kind of a fun way to like have them track their progress, so to speak, and they'll remember how they were at, you know, the super easy levels or the super easy boss mode, and then now they're doing this at a much higher level, okay? If this is even too easy for my student, I could go from a halt at 5 seconds to a walk at 5 seconds, and then if I'm at 2-point, maybe it's a walk for 5 seconds with airplane arms, okay? So that would be my levels that I'm going to be doing. If this is an adult, same thing. I could do very similar, but I might layer in a few things faster, like them counting out loud, even though, kids, they can count out loud as well. But I might maybe layer in some type of other thing to make that level a little bit more challenging. And I might also relabel it as a challenge for that adult, okay? All right, so with our walk, halt, walk, what we're gonna be looking at here is our walk, halt, walk. We can start by just stopping by an object. And I don't care what part of the horse is by the object, but we are there. So that's our level 1. Then our level 2 is gonna be, we're gonna stop by the object, and you are gonna have the front half of your horse by it. So again, we're kind of narrowing in the portion of our horse that we want to be stopping at. So that's our level 2. And then our level 3 could be that, okay, we're gonna stop with our horse's shoulder by whatever object we're starting at or stopping at. So that's gonna be how I would gamify or level up to go to that next level. And you could even put in there something that, okay, you need to be able to do each of these 2 times in a row and 2 in a row in sequence without breaking it in order for you to level up to the next task that you're gonna be doing. So that's a way that you can kind of adjust that as well. With adults, I would do something very similar, but they might need to show me more repetitions at that level, and maybe they also have to tell me something that they're doing at that time, like what's the first aid that they're using, okay? So again, that's gonna be our challenge for our adults. Very similar thing we can do. Another thing that you can do with this, if this is maybe even too hard for some of the students that you're working with, is we can go by stopping from an object, and we have a verbal countdown from the instructor, to then we're stopping by the object, and it's the student giving the verbal countdown and self-reminder by stopping at that object. And then we're gonna get to where the stop is not just at an object, but maybe I layer back on my help, and their next challenge is to stop with the front half of their horse by that object. So do you see here how we can kind of level up, level down, add in support, take away support, add it back in as we do different levels, and it's all in the wording and the presentation and how you deliver it to those riders to get them to have that buy-in and that enjoyment, okay? All right, so the next one that we're gonna talk about is canter leads. So how can we gamify canter leads? So this one, I would go number of unbroken reps. So how many times can you pick up the correct canter lead in a row? And to make sure that it doesn't get too out of hand, especially if your horse has multiple lessons during that day, of course, we're gonna have to make a wise choice about the numbers. But we can tell our students that our goal for that week's lesson level or their challenge is to get 3 in a row correct canter leads, okay? This could also be watching another rider pick up the canter or watching a horse on a lunge line. Let's throw in the groundwork there. And they could identify the canter lead of the horse that they're watching while they're on the ground. And same thing, how many times can they correctly identify that canter lead without any help and get it correct? And what's their win streak there with that, okay? So this is something, I know I'm using a lot of mounted examples, but this can totally be applied to unmounted lessons. So we can gamify our unmounted lessons as well, okay? Alrighty, so that was canter leads. Youth, adults, again, number of repetitions, how much I'm going to expect from them. All of that is going to play into whether it's a youth challenge or an adult challenge. And then the wording is going to be the biggest difference between the two of how I present it from the youth to the adult, okay? All right, the polls. So we could do the poll pattern. We could do number of strides. So how many strides are we getting in between our sets of poles? And you can make your sets of poles or jumps even the same on either side. And they have the challenge of creating the same number of strides. And then you can even see if they can shorten the length of strides or decrease. If we're shortening the length, we're going to increase the number of the steps or strides in between the poles there. And that's a way that you could gamify poles. You could also gamify them not looking down if you're working on that, or how many times are they actually looking out at the end of their line over a jump or poles, and that they're not being told, so this is like the verbal, they're not being told to look at the end of their line or look where they're going or not cut corners. So when you're doing something with poles, like ground poles, think about maybe the things that you have to constantly remind your student about and see if you can gamify it. And I know looking down and not cutting corners, that's something that's very common for youth and adults. So I would be doing something like that for both of them. Okay. All right. So with a pattern, so say you're working on a trail pattern for a horse show that's coming up and you want to help prepare your student for that. Your pattern, again, it could be timed. So maybe we're looking to decrease our time going through. Maybe we're looking to decrease the number of times that we make an error or an oops. Maybe you're dropping something or you miss a bucket or whatever it might be. We're decreasing errors. We could also do that. We're decreasing the amount of verbal prompts. Can't spell verbal prompts from the instructor, and we're not going off course, or we don't need a reminder of what we're doing there. So lots of different things that you can do with your time, with your pattern, time, error, verbal prompts. You could also do precision. So, throughout your pattern, every time you halt, we're going to be having it at our horse's shoulder, whatever that item is that we're stopping by. So you can even get more precise. Okay. So, tons and tons of different ways that you can gamify the lessons with your students. All right, so very last part here, we're gonna be talking about some bonus tips that you can incorporate into your lessons when you are wanting to add some gamification. So number one is you can have your students create their own levels. Now, little warning here, when you let your students create their own levels or create their own challenges or determine what that boss mode is, depending on how experienced your students are and depending on how crazy their imaginations might get, you might want to give what's called controlled choices. And that is where you can say, okay, level one, we can either make it be 10 seconds or 20 seconds. Which one do you want? Because I've had some kids where we're out there going around and I ask them what they want their next level to be. And instead of jumping from like 5 to 20, they choose like 600 because they're being silly. And that was on me because I didn't give them an option and a controlled choice. So have your students create their own levels. You actually might be really surprised at what they think they can do. And I always toss in one that's like kind of at the level that I want them at and maybe is like a smidge easier, but I want to build confidence. And then I'll toss in one that's definitely higher and see if they'll shoot for that more challenging attempt. And if you know it's going to be a much more challenging attempt, you can even let them have, 3 chances at that level or 2 chances or whatever it is to respawn and try that level again before we have to take it back a step and try and attempt something a little different. And as the instructor, I need to adjust the level of difficulty, okay? So when you have them create their own levels, give them controlled choices. And then like I had already mentioned before, you're gonna wanna try to roll this over into your next lesson. And this is, again, like I said, a really fun way to kind of have the students see what level they were at last week that they made it to, what level they're at this week, and then did they make it any further? So that's something super fun that we can do as well. If, for example, during lesson 1, my students made it through levels 1 through 4, I'm not gonna probably have them start all the way back at level 1 in the next lesson. I'm probably gonna have them start at like 2 or 3, kind of depending on how they were doing. And then that means that we can then kind of progress a little bit further and maybe make it to like 5 or 6 that lesson. So again, this is actually kind of making that student progression a little bit more visible and more, I guess, tangible almost to us and to our students. It's also kind of a fun way if you have helpers or volunteers involved. They can help with this and remind you of where those students were at. This is a good thing to put in your notes. So gamification across the board is just a super fun thing to have in the back of your pocket. And when you're running out of ways to creatively keep practicing the things we need to practice, like our riding position, transitions, our rein management, all the boring stuff that we say over and over, this is a way, the gamification is a way that we can practice those things in a fun way and bring a little bit more attention and purpose to that specific item that we feel like we're just constantly kind of maybe nagging our student about. We can focus on it in a more fun way. So I would love to hear from you. What are ways that you have gamified during your lesson? Is it something that you usually do across the board, or is it something that you have only up until this point in time done with your younger students? Or is it something that you only teach adults right now and you've never really done it before? Is there something that you as the instructor have encountered where it's been a gamification that you've really enjoyed participating in yourself? Share that down below. I'd love to hear from you. And if you want example lessons of where that verbal gamification happens, we have sample lessons in the Intuitive Instructor Club, and there are also tons of actual games and actual physical activities that do require setup, and how you can incorporate those into lessons. So if you want more ideas on how to keep your lessons fun and engaging and to really enhance your teaching and accelerate your student progression no matter what type of lesson you teach, but the videos are really geared towards adaptive and therapeutic horseback riding instructors, make sure you check out the Intuitive Instructor Club. Thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next episode.